Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Clinton Smith, style editor at Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles magazine. For those of you having deja vu, this is a new role that I started at the beginning of the month, in addition to some other design-related hats that I wear. Over the past 20 years, I've held either 5 or 6 titles at the magazine. So the last month has really been a homecoming of sorts, and it's nice to be back involved with Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles and working with Elizabeth Rawls and the team there, and of course the Atlanta design community in a much more active way. So thank you for the warm welcome. Before we get started, I want to extend a warm welcome to everyone, albeit virtually. I very much look forward to seeing everyone when we can all gather together in person. And a big thank you to ADAC, of course, Katie, Mackenzie, and others for all their work in making Discover ADAC happen in this new format. This is no small feat, and I tip my hat to them. The title of our talk today is Natural Connections. Homeowners are looking for experiences to help nurture their well-being, and we'll explore a community that's designed around that premise. Plus, we'll be looking at natural connections through the lens of collaboration. Design is never done in a vacuum, and I think all of us have been relying upon our long-term connections and trusted resources now more than ever. To discuss all of this, I'm so thrilled to be joined by 3 remarkable and respected talents in their respective fields. The designer Smith Haynes and Ryan Hughes and Stephen Leonard of the R. Hughes Showroom. If you live in Atlanta and dine out, you've probably visited a Smith Haynes design restaurant over the years. He's really helped shape the dining scene in the city. His firm, Smith Haynes Studio, is known for creating some of the most unique hospitality and lifestyle projects, both in Atlanta and across the Southeast and the United States. Smith and his team have designed everything from coffee shops to art galleries, to spas, to hotel lobbies, to private residences. He's also had a creative role in helping to imagine and shape Serenity, the community we'll be talking about later, since its very inception. If you're a regular visitor to ADAC and have visited the 3rd floor, there's little doubt that you've not met Ryan Hughes and Stephen Leonard of the R. Hughes Showroom. Just recently, the Business of Home dubbed the space the coolest showroom in America. Congratulations to them on that accolade. The duo have a proven talent for discovering previously unseen, impactful, artisan quality pieces and makers and introducing them to the Southeastern marketplace. Their 9,000 square foot showroom is both experiential in design and unique in its immersive installations and displays. More on all of that in just a moment. Right now, please join me in welcoming Smith, Ryan, and Stephen. So just a quick reminder before we get started, you can submit questions via the Q&A button, and we'll be answering them at the end of the presentation. So please send your questions and we'll get to them at the very end. So as we talk about natural connections, we're going to be taking a virtual field trip later in our talk to the wellness-focused Serenity community, a place where work has led each of my panelists. I guess we're going to get on the virtual downtown connector and make our way down there from ADAC. So, but before we go there, I want to start in the showroom and talk briefly about R. Hughes, its inception, and evolution. I think the showroom has such a significant place at the heart of ADAC now that I think even such a short time, people have forgotten, Ryan and Stephen, that you originally started off-site before making your way to ADAC. Can you briefly tell everyone what led you here and how your initial experience with Smith began?
Yeah, so originally we were on the west side at White Provision, which is a really cool building, and I kind of wanted to do something different, and that was kind of the reason for the start there. And ADAC had been reaching out and wanted us to come to the design center, and also the design center is where people shop in the South, so we wanted to be there too. And I think but we wanted it to feel like something different, and that kind of led us to Smith Haynes. I was thinking to myself, you know, what are my favorite places in Atlanta to go? And a lot of those places are restaurants he's designed. And So I called a friend up and I said, we can't afford him. It's just that. And she's like, you don't know until you call him. So we called him and we met with him, and he was just as excited about the project as we were. And I felt that from the initial meeting. And so it became the space we're in today. So we've now been in the space 5 years.
So it's suffice it to say, you really recreated this from the ground up, with the floors pretty much being one of the most important elements of the design of the whole space. Can you chat about why that was so important?
Clint, I'm not sure I understood the question.
Reimagining the space from the ground up.
Oh, yeah.
Those beautiful wood floors are really sort of the centerpiece and anchor, and there's an authenticity to all of the materials throughout this space. And wondering if each of you could kind of touch on that.
Sure. Well, when Ryan and Stephen came to our studio to talk to us about the project, I was really impressed that I felt like they wanted to really they were embarking on a hospitality business, as well as a place for people to find beautiful things. But they were really studying the best in hospitality as they were conceiving this room. And so when we thought of the room, we really didn't just think about it as a place to sell things. We thought about it as a place for people to hear great music, see beautiful things that they had never seen before. And we did a lot of study about the best hoteliers, Sean McPherson, Aaron Martin. We looked at hotels like Chateau Marmont and the North Hotel in Redwood and Andre Balaz. So I thought it was fascinating. They were coming to me and really kind of reimagining show space as a place to be in the hospitality business.
Seeing that original slide is like going down memory lane. And to Ryan's point, saying that we didn't know if we could afford Smith. We were able to afford the fees, but I don't know if we were able to afford his imagination, because looking at all the things on that board that we wanted to do and execute, some of them we were able to, some of them we weren't. It's really just nice to see that again.
Well, you bought that floor.
Yeah, we did.
The floor was a big thing, but I mean, even what was drawn originally was a lot more steel and glass, like all plaster and brick walls. I mean, a lot of that had to be cut. And I remember when we were cutting it from the budget, I was just like, oh my gosh, is this going to feel as good as we had originally hoped and imagined? And that was the whole design philosophy behind this. The space was the experience the space would give you. And when I see something and I think it's perfect, then it's in my head, we have to have it. So that was a learning process for me too. And I, even now looking back at those boards, the space is obviously still as successful without some of those things we had to cut from the budget. But the floor definitely was something that was sticker shock at first. It's all reclaimed floor, which for 9,000 square feet, in a commercial space is a lot of money, because we obviously don't own the space. So, but Smith really pushed us on that. And I think it was kind of the foundation of the room that was just so important, because he said to me, Ryan, who else does a floor like this in their showroom? And I thought, well, unless it's an old space in Soho, New York, or, an old building, you just don't see this. And that was a big part of the feeling of the room.
To incorporate natural light into the space, which, talking about natural connections, you really brought some of the outdoors inside, which had not been done as much before there, correct?
Yeah, that's true. So Smith really, I'll let him speak on this, but everyone always thought you're your front of house is kind of, or your display area is what you see from the hallway. And Smith had a different way of approaching the layout of the space. He's like, we need to give more light in the back, so then you have some back of house things in the front, which is kind of the opposite way of thinking about the typical showroom build outs in the building. And it was brilliant because having the natural light is just in all those windows, it makes such a difference in the way the space feels.
Yeah, Clint, Stephen and Ryan really understood that most showrooms at that point had not taken advantage of all the natural light that's available from the outside of the building. Most people had built their offices against the natural light, and to create the drama of seeing their goods lit with spotlights and such. But I think what happened with this room was the natural light was really drawing you in, especially in the front room, the main room of the showroom. And then they created these amazing dark rooms. So there's one very light room and there are two very dark rooms. And I always think of this as the balance of masculine and feminine. But so you walk into all of this brilliant light, and then you walk into the two rooms on the left and the right, and it's completely dark. So I think the balance of those two really brings a lot of energy to the showroom and a lot of sophistication as well.
And we also asked Smith to give us a canvas to do what we do, to sell furniture. And just looking at all of these pictures, there's so many different canvases in the showroom that he afforded us to be able to do our own photography, brand our company, and make it consistent throughout. We photograph everything on our website. So the floor has really become part of our brand. And we would not have had that without Smith.
And I think too, we wanted the backdrop to be a sustainable backdrop that felt timeless. That way, I'm looking at some of these photos that are, 5 years old, and the foundation of the space still looks just as current today as it did 5 years ago, even though the furniture and the collections we sell and the product we sell is always changing. So that was really important too.
It's like the perfect marriage of form and function. So heading down south of Atlanta for a little bit, we're going to go to Serenbe. And if you've not been there, this is an amazing community just south of the airport where they take really a 360-degree holistic approach to living. And as I mentioned earlier, your work has taken each of you there for one reason or the other. Smith, you've been involved creatively with this community since the very beginning. Can you give us a background on how it came to be and how it's now synonymous with wellness and nature and how it's continuing to evolve?
Sure. So I believe it was 2005. Our friends, Steve and Marie Nygren, sold their business. He had quite a successful restaurant group called the Peasant Group in Atlanta. And he had sold his business, and they decided that they wanted to, instead of live in Ansley, they decided that they wanted to live in the country. So they bought a country house and turned it into a bed and breakfast. And their kids were in high school, and they could get their kids to high school from Serenbe. And so Elisa and I would actually sit their bed and breakfast on weekends when they wanted to go away, maybe 4 times a year or something. But so Steve was an avid runner, and he used to run through the woods all the time at Serenbe. And I remember him saying that all of the people that have come to the bed and breakfast and love Serenbe as a bed and breakfast, it seems like people are starting to buy land around me. And so he took action, as Steve always does, and he decided that he would get some partners and they would buy a large tract of land and basically develop in a new way, in a sustainable way, in a way that was more green than we had ever seen back then. And he engaged Lou Oliver and Phil Tabb and Robert Rouse, three really brilliant men. Lou Oliver was doing buildings, and Phil Tabb was planning the community. He's a specialist in sacred geometry. And so Phil was actually laying out the land to speak with the heavens. And Robert Rouse was he's a photographer, but he's an amazing creative. And he created some of the most wonderful, odd elements of the community. He did those initial street lamps that were made of bronze with the arms that come out and they have little twinkle lights on them. And then Steve asked me to come on and help him create the Blue-Eyed Daisy, which was in the first hamlet. Steve decided that they would fashion this after like small towns in England out in the countryside. So we called them hamlets. And the first hamlet is Selburn. And so you're looking at a picture of the Blue-Eyed Daisy Bake Shop in the center of Selburn. So Selburn is like a pod of 150 houses. And so for almost 5 years, I worked with Lou and Phil and Robert and Steve and a whole group of engineers. And I mean, we were basically concepting a small town, gathering the lodging or gathering the houses very tight in the middle of the community or the hamlet. And then as you get to the edges of the hamlet, it gets more sparse and there become estate sites and that kind of thing. But if you go back a couple of slides to the labyrinth. So Steve and Marie are amazing at creating community. They actually had an event for 35 of us. They engaged 2 women from Maine who specialize in designing labyrinths. And so these 2 women came for a weekend and Steve and Marie put up 35 of their friends to create this labyrinth. I spent 2.5 days actually lugging rocks, creating this. So really, Steve has created, and all the people around him, his whole family, have created a town. There are now 3 hamlets. There's Selburn Grange, which is the farm hamlet, and then Motto, which is what they consider the wellness community, or so Motto is a Creek Indian word. It means life and balance. So that Motto is their newest of the 3 pods or community.
Around 2005 at this point, do you think they were ahead of their time? I mean, I don't think people were celebrating this sort of farm to table lifestyle sensibility yet.
I think the Nigrans are visionaries. I think they saw it coming. They knew that people were going to be interested in this. And, you know, what's fascinating now is their sense of building a community has drawn all kinds of creatives and high-level professionals, writers, artists, designers are now living in that community. And I think it's the thing that is now drawing the people like Ryan, who has just recently committed to doing a house there. But their sense of pulling the right people together and then envisioning something that is just bigger than most people could. I think that's what they're really gifted at.
And do you think when people first arrive, and those who have never been there before, that they really, do you think they walk away, do you think they enter this world thinking they're going to find one thing and leave with some sort of other experience that really sort of, I would think, is much more emotional? Because anytime I visited, you sort of walk away with a piece of the sense of peace and serenity and calmness, which you don't necessarily get visiting a commercial development.
Yeah, you know, this past weekend, we were looking at a job up at Maggie Valley, North Carolina. It's a remodel of a place called Cataloochee Ranch. And it was, we stayed overnight at a place called the Swag, and just to have the kind of quiet and dark that you get out in the woods. Like, we worked probably a 10-hour day, but afterwards it was just like complete and utter quiet. I was very moved by how it made me feel to get out in the country like that. And I think that's what happens when people go to Serenbe. I think there's a lot of activities you can do. I think there's tons to do. And Ryan said yesterday when we were talking that, like, everything is there. You know, there's everything you need is in that community. But then you also are in the pitch black dark of the dark night of 30 minutes south of Atlanta, and you don't have the city lights. And I think there's just this feeling you get when you're in that kind of environment.
So, as I mentioned earlier, it's always been had this farm to table sensibility, but a recent project you worked on there, Halsa, sort of takes that to another level. I can't get the menu out of my head. I'm obsessing over the crispy kale and Brussels sprout tacos with avocado, cilantro, baby heirloom tomato, chipotle tofu, and cilantro lime aioli. It's almost worth getting on a flight to come down there just to have that for lunch.
You too can go vegan.
Actually, I will say that is the best thing on the menu. And I've had like everything on the menu.
Is that one dish?
Yeah, one dish.
So the restaurant Halsa is based on Swedish design and culture, and Halsa, I didn't realize, actually translates to health in Swedish. Can you tell us a little bit about your work on that? And I'm really interested in how you kind of translate that ethos into materials and furnishings.
Well, Steve and his wife had just gone to Sweden, and they came back really inspired to make Motto into a very colorful community. In Sweden, you'll often find the houses are like yellow and pink and blue and gray and black and purple and pink. And this is what Steve wanted it at Motto, the community where the pod or the hamlet where Halsa is located. So I worked with Steve actually on colorizing all of the houses at Motto, like in a plan. He wanted to make a plan of how to colorize the houses. And so at the same time, he felt like the core of the neighborhood had to have a place that everybody could go and have a meal. And they called it Halsa, and the client always has a directive. And this one was, we just want it to be quiet and very and spare, like just a spare, modern but not too modern eatery that people can have breakfast and lunch and dinner at. So when we started designing this, we decided it would be a very monochromatic palette, a lot of natural materials, like the ceiling is natural wood, the concrete, and then all the walls are this kind of blush. It looks very pink in this photograph, but it's just that blush color. And we have a brilliant man who actually worked on Ryan's showroom as well, Tommy Taylor, Will Wallace and Daniel Biddy, who did the plaster in this project. And their company name is Super Delicious Walls. But so he did this beautiful plaster technique, and the pattern is actually in plaster as well. So if the decorative pattern over near the seating, so if you happen to chip the wall, the color goes all the way through the wall. So that's not a mural, it's actually plaster on the wall creating the pattern.
Well, plaster has such an amazing tactile quality. I'm sure people are just kind of caressing it all the time. It's so cool to the touch.
Acoustically, it's good too. It has some good acoustic qualities to it.
What are those, I guess, acoustic quote tiles above the service area?
Well, actually, that's wood. That's wood in a decorative pattern. At some point in the project, Lauren from my studio, who was running this project, kind of came up with this a pill shape, that she wanted that pill shape to happen a few times. And if you notice, it happens a little bit in the stool, it happens in the chair, and it happens in the ceiling. It's kind of this oval shape. And that's wood, but the remainder of the ceiling is a ceiling that was developed for museums in France. The company name is Clipso, and we use it quite often. It looks like drywall, but it gives the most beautiful acoustical quality to the room. It doesn't deaden it's like a really brilliant sound. It doesn't deaden the sound, but it makes everything just lush.
And how important is it to inject contemporary design into a community like this, which is out in the country, so that, you know, maybe city people who are visiting expect, you know, the barns and the horses and, you know, more traditional aspects of architecture? This must be a really welcome surprise when they kind of walk in the door.
Yeah, I would think they would think it was nice and fresh. And I mean, a lot of sophisticated people go to Serenbe, so they want a little bit of everything, you know. They want their country to be country, and they want their modern to be a little country too. I mean, that's kind of a little, you know, textural, but yeah.
I will say that one of the ways that Ryan got me to work on the project that we worked on down there was enticing me to eat at Halsa. So that restaurant got me down there a few times.
Here you go.
Part of the presentation. The two of you worked on an amazing house for a friend, which was featured in the August issue of Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles and is currently on the magazine's website. Can you share with us a little bit about how this came about? You're both the first to say that you're not interior designers and you're not quitting your day job, but this is a remarkable project that you did for a friend.
Yeah, no, we're definitely not designers. So I actually I followed Serenbe on Instagram, obviously, and I saw this house on Instagram that Serenbe had posted, and my really good friend Jared had been talking about wanting a place to escape. He's a busy real estate agent in Atlanta, and so this house popped up, and I said, Jared, this is one of my favorite houses I've ever seen. We should go look at it. And so we drove down there. I think it was on a Sunday, and I was shocked, but he ended up making an offer on it. So it was pretty much built. Everything was done. We got to pick out the hardwood floors for it, very minimal things. And then I told him, I said, you know, I think if this is going to be your kind of escape house, it has to feel exactly like your personality, and it has to be a place that you feel really good in. And he had never had really a home designed with that in mind. And I thought Serenbe was the perfect place to have that experience in this home. And so I told him, I said, Stephen and I will help you do this, but you have to just let us do exactly what we want to do. You give us a budget, and I mean, obviously you have to approve what we're putting in it, but you kind of have to let us go with it. So almost it was like kind of a experimental like showroom situation where we don't have to get really approval from anyone with, with what we pick out for the showroom. So this was kind of the same thing on a design project aspect. And so that's kind of how it all began, really. I'll let Stephen
Ryan,
speak on it a little more. Yeah.
did you hit the budget?
No. It went way over budget. And then he told me at the end of the project that he hated yellow. There's quite a bit of yellow in the project. But anyways.
Well, the good news is Jared doesn't like the word budget either, so it worked out for everyone.
Yes.
I think it's interesting, as beautiful as this is, one of the aspects of Serenbe is you have all of this amazing open space and countryside, but there are pockets where the houses are clustered together. So privacy can be an issue. And here you had an amazing solution to really give him privacy in this living room, but really not separate the space from the outside world.
Yeah. And I always find that curious that people want windows and all like light and everything, and then they just cover them up because you look right into your neighbor's house. So we wanted to figure out how we could balance this large room. So we decided to drape both sides with this pretty, I think it's a rosing sheer. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then each side has, I think, 4 panels. So you could slide all of them to one side. You could split them down the middle. We kind of divide them into 3 sections just to kind of leave the windows open. And then it also gave us an opportunity for the little dining nook to give that a little bit more intimacy. I don't know if you can see it in these pictures. And then being white too, they kind of went away, left it nice and airy. I think it was really successful.
Yeah, and this home,
Feeling to them.
Yeah, this home's in Motto actually, and it sits on Anders Garden. It's the Anders Garden cottages. So you have this, even though the homes are close together, you have this beautiful garden in the whole running through the center of all these homes, which is also a gathering space, which is a big part of Serenbe. So yeah, for the shears, it was like you want to be able to experience being on the garden, you need privacy. So it lets the light in, it gives you privacy. So yeah, I think it was the perfect solution, because Jared was a little hesitant about it. But I said, if we cover these windows with wood blinds or, Roman shades, you're going to lose having that all day experience with the light and the views of the garden. So I think it turned out really well. And then we found this vintage table that we were actually going to use as a center table when you walk in the front door. It's to the right of the fireplace. But Jared he found a new love for plants and everything living in this location. So he wanted to have an area where he could have a lot of his plants inside. So we ended up just making that table kind of a planting table, which I think it turned out pretty nice, and it brings the green inside the home too.
What was your philosophy on mixing old and new in the vintage, and any of his personal effects as well?
Yeah, Jared's personality is pretty eclectic. I know that's kind of a weird word, but yeah, I think, going back to the living room, I mean, that coffee table we found at Decades on Cheshire Bridge, I think it was like $300. And then we mixed it with a Christian Lieg side table. So I liked experimenting with that. I think a lot of times people look at the showroom as everything is, a certain look or a certain level. And so this was also kind of an experiment where we could play with using some things that people probably wouldn't typically place in this kind of interior. So we had fun doing that. And then, yeah, we did get quite a few vintage pieces. That's a vintage velvet chair. The sofa's new from Dixon Rye. So yeah, but like the bar stools are from the showroom. So I think there's a lot of bad and cheap bar stools on the market. So this was something that I thought was important to spend money on. So yeah, we kind of did a little bit of high-low with the design.
Ryan, does that living room have light from 3 sides?
2 sides.
2. Yeah.
Well, no, the breakfast nook on the back, which you can't see a picture of that. So technically, yeah, 3 sides.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
something really magical about a room that actually has light from either left and right, both sides,
Mhm.
or 3 sides.
Yeah, the natural light in his home
You
is
can
really,
feel the sun. You can feel the sun going through the sky from inside the house, for sure.
yeah.
And then tell us a little bit about the transition to the private quarters where the spaces get more intimate, the palette shifts, it's much cozier.
Yeah, that's kind of going back to how the showroom was designed. I like kind of a bright and a dark experience in a house. And I think both of the bedrooms are darker. I think it gives you a very cozy experience with the darker colors and the richer, textures on the floor. And then having the all white sheer living room. I think the 2 experiences are really nice in this house. And that can be a little difficult to do. I mean, this house is probably 1,400 square feet, if that. So you also can't feel too disconnected from the rest of the house, but the layout of this was nice because it kind of has this hallway down the back of it with the 2 bedrooms. So it's the space is well laid out to achieve these 2 experiences.
And I think what made it fun for us too was Ryan and I are always shopping like furnishings and stuff. If we could have 10 houses and furnish all of our houses, that would be like a dream come true. So we've always loved this schoolhouse bed. So just being able to order that for Jared and then figure out the best way to show that off with that like dark green walls. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then I decided that I wanted this bed for myself, and they don't make it anymore in that color. So it's valuable.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Has he come around to liking the yellow?
No.
He won't admit it. I actually think he secretly really likes the color. I think he's just giving me a hard time.
Is that light fixture vintage?
Yeah. There's a funny story behind that. We were at a place on the west side, and I don't know, Stephen said, let's go into the basement of it. I don't know. And we went down in this basement, and this thing was hanging on the ceiling, not lit. It just looked like some sort of sculpture on the ceiling. And Stephen's like, I think it's a light fixture. And so we went up and asked the woman, we're like, is this for sale? And she's like, yeah. And I think it was like $100 or something. But it's such I don't know. I think it made
the color is great.
Yeah.
The color's great. It's, it adds a little bit of farm to the project, I think.
Yeah.
100%.
I love the mix of the contemporary art with the bed, which is much more traditional, and then looks like the vintage dresser. It's just a great composition.
Yeah, I think the mix.
The art's beautiful.
In this room with the grass cloth and the sisal rugs.
The grass cloth was actually like an afterthought. What made you decide to put that in there, Ryan? That wasn't the original design.
So I know the walls in this room were originally white, and Jared was not sleeping. This is the master.
That's right.
He wasn't sleeping in the room. He was sleeping in the guest room. He's like, I just like the guest room better. The master just doesn't feel cozy. And so I was like thinking to myself, I was like, well, the guest room has the dark walls. And I realized, I was like, I think that mood kind of brings that feeling that he wants, that he's drawn to for a bedroom. So we found this grass cloth from Philip Jeffries, and he didn't really like how much it cost, but I was like, I think you will start using the master if we put this on the walls. So that's what we did. And now he uses the master. And then these, all this art in the hallway, this was kind of Jared's project. He had started finding all these portraits of women on Etsy, at antique stores. And he kind of, this was like he had so much fun doing this. He went and took each one to be framed with a different frame. And so we had this idea to put all of these in this hallway, which is kind of speaks to his collection and kind of his idea for the home too.
So, Ryan, you have been seduced by Serenbe yourself, and will be making the move there. The magical pull has drawn you in as well, and you're going to be collaborating with Smith again on a very personal project.
Yeah, so it's a similar story. There was, during quarantine, there was a spec home about to be built that caught my eye. And so I had a little bit of peer pressure. I have some friends, Jared, and I have a few other friends that have homes in Serenbe. And so, yeah, I decided that, but the floor plan wasn't quite where it needed to be. So I engaged Smith, we started talking, he started drawing on it. Then the spec home becomes some sort of like semi-custom home that the builder probably regrets ever letting me put a contract on. And so, yeah, it's been fun. And I've also worked with Mr. and Mrs. Sharp, they live in Serenbe. They're designers there too. So they've helped me on the project too. But yeah, this has just been a great kind of little reconnection with Smith too. Since the showroom, we work really well together, and we're usually on the same page. I think I don't know if he agrees, but so yeah, it's been fun. And this is also my house in Atlanta was very black and white, and so this is another kind of experiment for me to use more color than I normally would on a house. So yeah, it's been fun. But this is just what you see in this photo is just kind of the board of some of the things that we've picked out, and yeah, the color story.
So we can plan our visit, the open house, and lunch at Halsa.
Yeah, perfect.
You see that plaster samples back on the table.
Yeah. We don't have the quote back yet for the plaster. We'll see.
I wanted to wrap up because for those of you who have not been to Serenbe, Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles is sponsoring the Serenbe Designer Show House, which is currently open as we speak through October 4th. All of the details are on serenbeshowhouse.com. The magazine has put together an amazing group of designers. So if you're in the area or not in the area and want a field trip, it's really a great opportunity to go see the community and explore all the things that we've been talking about that resonates with so many people, especially in these times. So now I think we're ready for Q&A.
Clint, did you happen to see the Serenbe communities giving away 2 pairs of tickets to their show house? Did you mention that?
Exact confirmation.
Yeah, we just read that in the chat. Oh, I see. They just given them away, I believe. Okay, they've given them away. Sorry, all you guys.
Smith, have you thought about getting a home in Serenbe?
I have it at times. Right now, we're good in Atlanta. It's we're quarantining.
This is alluding to my reference to Jared not liking the yellow, but I think it applies. Smith, you could chime in on this too. how do you convince a client to live with with a color they don't like? Or is that really possible?
Well, we can see it's possible. And we can also see what happens when the bedroom's too white. You end up later. Yeah. I don't know that I don't know that we have clients that are really that rigid. I think they're always looking for something to expand their world, you know?
Yeah, and I think I think when someone says they don't like a color, it could also mean that they never thought about using the color.
Yeah.
So I think for Jared, it was more like, oh, well, that wouldn't have been my first choice kind of thing, you know? But it ended up being, I think it works with the rest of the colors. And so then it ends up becoming not so much of an issue. I think if you just put a yellow fabric sample on the table, he might say, I absolutely hate that. But I think when you see it with the space and the green and the other colors that we used, it ends up working. I think maybe too, like the pink plaster in Halsa was probably to some people that could have felt risky, but it really works in the space that Smith designed and is quite calming as a color.
Someone's asking in the Jared's house, where did you say the vintage coffee table came from?
It came from an antique store I love on Cheshire Bridge. It's hit or miss, so I will warn you of that. But it's called Decades, and it's on Cheshire Bridge. And you can find some treasures there sometimes.
I think all the antique and vintage shops are hit or miss, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
All right, I don't think we have, wait, one more. Nope, I think we are done. So Guy, Smith, Stephen, Ryan, thank you so much for doing this today and sharing your expertise and your inspiration and the stories of your collaboration. Ryan, good luck with your house. And thanks to everyone for joining us today in this new format. And if you get a chance, as I mentioned, check out the Serenby Show House. And I, speaking on behalf of everyone, I think, look forward to seeing everyone again soon in the flesh, in person, when we can. So until then, take care and talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Clint. Bye.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, Stephen.